bills come out, they go into committee, they get marked up or marked down. And as a matter of fact, the Speaker of the House is the most powerful person in the United States because he or she has the authority to pull a bill out to be heard on the floor. And once that bill comes out, it has to be in identical language in the Senate and the House, where the bill dies through the conferences. And obviously, the president's signature. Now, let me just share something with you. When I started on this, I mentioned I had no idea what I was doing, and I actually had to go to the public library here and check out an 8th grade civics book to educate myself on how a bill becomes law. And I know all of you took civics in the 8th grade, and most of you have probably forgotten all the nuances of it. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that, here I am, a very lucky man, educated, upper middle income, and I don't understand how the government works. So how can I expect people who are not as fortunate as I am to understand how the government works and make intelligent decisions? And so I gave myself a very quick study on how the government works. In addition to that, I should note that every legislative session, 20,000 bills are introduced, and about 200 of those are ever brought out on the floor. And John F.A.C.S said, well, it's much harder to pass a bill, or much harder to defeat a bill than to pass a bill in Congress based on those numbers. The average bill to become law is about 7 years. The average cost is about $10 million. We're able to get this bill passed in just a little over a year and a half, and the budget was about $135,000. So here's Mr. Gingrich, who was the Speaker of the House at that time, and I'll get back to him with what happened with him in just a little while. But I went back in January. Very quickly, by May, we had 120 co-sponsors in the House. And Senator Feinstein was running the Senate version of the bill for me, and she had about 11 co-sponsors in June. And I called her up and I said, you really got to get things moving in the Senate. She was so devoted to what she was doing, is that she actually took the bill down to the floor one day during a senatorial meeting and got some 50 signatures, just went from person to person to person and made her sign the bill. So she was very, very dedicated to the cause. So things are looking pretty good. Now, at that time, Newt Gingrich, F.A.C.S introduced the original bill in the House, and Newt Gingrich and F.A.C.S got in a big fight because Gingrich got in trouble with some tax evasion issues, and F.A.C.S was his major critic, and there was no way that Gingrich was going to pull the F.A.C.S bill out on the floor and make him look good. So F.A.C.S was very gracious man, and he handed down the bill to Susan Molinari, who was the Republican sweetheart in the 1996 convention in San Diego, and she was very good friends with Newt Gingrich. And she committed to introduce the bill, but about 1 week later, she said that she's going to retire. She said to go work for CBS, but prior to her leaving, she said she would get this bill done for me. So Gingrich told Burton, who's the Government Reform Oversight Committee, to tell McHugh, who's in charge of the Postal Service, to just get this thing done. So things are looking pretty good, and then Bill Paxton decides he's going to overthrow Newt Gingrich, and he was married to Susan Molinari. So I'm sitting there in Washington, D.C., biting bullets, when, they're fighting, and now, Gingrich and Paxton are going at it, and Molinari's in the middle, and I called Susan up, and I said, you gotta put a muzzle on Bill Paxton just for a couple weeks to get this bill done. And he eventually went away. And we did a very gutsy thing on the third Tuesday of every month. You can bypass the Speaker of the House, and under a special rule called suspension of the rules, you can bring a bill out to be heard and voted on. The trick to it is that if it doesn't pass by a 2/3 majority, the bill is over. So on July 22nd, 1997, I remember sitting in the gavel up in the House of Representatives watching the proceedings go on, and we dropped the gavel down, and the vote came in on the bill, and it passed by a vote of 422-3. Now, if you want to know who the three people were that voted against it, you can see me after the conference. Two of them are no longer representatives, and so it's not really my doing to brag about it. So the next thing is Feinstein puts the House bill in the identical language as for the Senate, and it passed there unanimously by 100-0. And then it goes to the President. The President has 10 days to sign a veto. If he doesn't, then it becomes a pocket veto, and the bill is gone once again. But on the 10th day, Bill Clinton did sign the bill into law, so we were looking pretty good. Now we got a bill, we got a stamp, now it's time to get the word out about the stamp. It's sort of kind of tragic. As much as I travel around the country, a lot of people have never heard of the stamp. And part of that is the post office's problem because they don't advertise it. Keep in mind now that the post office makes all of their money. It doesn't cost them a thing. In fact, they have made on this project, they've made almost $500 million because they still get their 32, 34, 38 cents. Just the extra goes away. So they're fully covered. In addition to that, they sell a lot of stamps that become collector's items that are never used. So they're selling a service, billing for a service that they never have to provide. So they make very good money. So we got into the Chronicle and a couple of them were back in the various magazines I mentioned. And then this is a picture of me at the world headquarters of the United States Postal Service. The shackles have been removed by Officer Knox, and now we become the very, very best of friends. We unveiled the stamp in July of 1998 at the Revlon Run Walk for breast and ovarian cancer. A lot of stars, Kelsey Grammer, Selma Hayek, all these people have nothing to do with the bill, of course, were there taking credit for it. That's the way it goes, you know. All these senators that never wanted to give me the time of day wanted to do all these photo ops and, you know, let's do lunch and yada, 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 on it goes. Now, one of the really great things about a project like this, if you're fortunate enough, like I was, as far as you really meet a lot of really great people. So I've had the pleasure of meeting Katie Couric, Diane Sawyer, former Governor Wilson, Rudolph Giuliani, Shaquille O'Neal. By the way, I'm not as tall as these are stairs. 5 steps above them, so don't be deceived by that. Scott Hamilton, I've had a chance of meeting. Christy Yamaguchi's done a number of fundraisers for us down in the Bay Area. And I've had the pleasure of, I don't know if I won this match. I don't think so. But I have played with Andres. He is such a nice man. Let me tell you, his sister and mother both have breast cancer, and that's his interest in the cause of raising money. And, you know, he's such an accomplished guy, and he's so humble and down to earth. He's just a tremendous advocate and a tremendous friend. I've had a chance of meeting Lance Armstrong as well. He's got his own issues, as you know. And currently, I'm working with Olivia Newton-John, and I'll get to that in just a few minutes. Well, one of the proudest days of my life was when we were invited, my family and I were invited to the White House by Mrs. Clinton to unveil the stamp, and no stamp has ever been unveiled in the White House, so it was quite an event. So I hadn't got a chance to meet her. I just want to share a story with her. This was July 29, 1998, and it was the week before the Monica Lewinsky story was going to break. And the reason that I bring this up is that I wasn't aware, I was aware later, that what she was about to face in the weeks to come was not going to be a very pleasant time in her life. And despite that, and I knew she knew about this on that weekend, she was so incredibly poised and gave such an impassioned talk about women's health care issues, particularly breast cancer, in this situation. I decided a tremendous amount of respect for her, knowing what was on her mind, yet being able to control herself and totally delve into the issue. Now this is what's called the first in issue. This was the stamp that was released at the White House. This is a major collector's item. Remember the philatelist and stamp collectors I talked about? You know, they would love to have this stamp. And you know what? They can't. You know why? Because I have it. Let me describe the stamp to you. It's drawn by Whitney Sherman. It's a picture of Diana Artemis, who's the Roman mythological protector of women. And what she's doing here is she's reaching for a bow and her quiver to fend off an enemy of women, which in this case obviously is breast cancer. The right breast has been removed and symbolically replaced with our logo, which is fun to fight to find a cure. The position that she's assuming is also the position for breast self-examination, and it's also the position for mammography. So there's a subtle message in this stamp for ladies to get their examinations. The rainbow of colors represents the fact that it's a disease that affects women of all colors, and the rainbow also traditionally is a symbol for hope, which is hope for a cure.